Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. I've got some work to do in the veggie garden today. My arch trellis is overgrown, needs clearing and planting out, and I've got some habanero chilies and capsicums that still need a summer home. I've got a pea bed that could be growing better, and we'll be discussing changes to how I grow them for next season. And there's just a few other things I thought we could have a look at. This arch trellis is somewhere that I usually grow beans, and I have grown some cucumbers on there before. But over winter I had lots of lettuce here, I had a few potatoes, and I grew some Swiss chard, which all did really well. But now they're mostly seeding, so need to move on. Now I might keep a couple of these lettuce plants in the ground to finish the cycle and produce some seeds. The Swiss chard, I do have seeding elsewhere, so I don't need to hang on to those plants. Now also in this garden I've got some parsley, which I'll probably keep. There is some flowering nasturtium, which is looking lovely at the moment, so I might just leave that too. And I've got a couple of echinacea plants, which are beautiful, and I'll make sure that I don't damage those at all as I clear out the rest of the garden. I'm going to make a start by clearing this path that actually runs through the middle that you can't see at the moment. And then I'm going to clear carefully around each of the plants that I want to preserve so that I don't damage them in the process. I'm in the middle of building new composts at the moment, so I'm just going to dump this material here and then I'll be building my compost another day. I'm currently in the middle of emptying this compost bay and putting that onto the garden. My next step is to put this compost into here, and then my most recent compost, which has just been filled, I'll be tipping into this bay, and then that'll leave that empty to start building a new one. So I'm just going to be leaving my material here, and I'll be starting on the new compost pile really soon. Just here I've got two of the echinaceas that I planted last year, and in this second season the plants have really strengthened and they're doing heaps better than last year. And in the middle here I have this purple cabbage that I would have planted back in March, and it was so slow getting going that I didn't think it'd ever get anywhere. Now I will have to harvest that soon. It's starting to become full of snails and slugs and little caterpillars, so that's probably a good size to take now. So I might actually even harvest that today. Yeah, right. Have a look. It was a long time coming, but that little head of cabbage is enough to make a nice coleslaw to go with dinner. And I think this lot can go to the chickens. Not only will they get cabbage, but they'll get a few bugs in this lot as well. Girls and boys. It's all a bit caught up in here. This parsley plant's a decent sized plant, so I do want to hang on to that. So I'll get rid of some of this lettuce around it. This red lettuce I'm going to preserve for seed, and there's another red lettuce not far away that's a different variety, you know, leaf, that I'll also hang on to. And just over the other side I've got a second parsley, and I think I'll keep that. There is a sad looking cabbage right next to it which is pest ridden, so I'm not even going to worry about that. I'll try and preserve the nasturtium if I can, but I've got potatoes that are growing right next to it which I'll have to drag out of the ground, so I don't know whether I'll preserve the nasturtium or not, but I've got so many little seedlings coming around that we won't miss this one plant. Oh, that's my cabbage out of there. Now a few potatoes to pull. And there's a couple of little small potatoes, and it didn't disturb the ground too much. These are just from probably tiny little potatoes that I've left here in previous harvests. Nice little salad size really, and we're able to preserve the nasturtium roots in the ground fairly well there. I'll get that little guy out. Tell you what, once you've got potatoes in the ground growing, you've always got a meal because you can always find some to dig up. And if you don't get these ones out, you'll have even more. Okay, we've cleared that fairly nicely, that corner. So these parsley's are going to grow beautifully there, get plenty of space and plenty of light. So now we'll just move down the garden bed. And as we do that, anyone guess what this one is? Yes, that's right, more potatoes that I didn't actually plant, but grown from potatoes that were left here. So I'll go and get those out of the ground as well. Now, I definitely didn't intend this as a potato harvest video, but who knows, it could turn out to be just that. There's plenty of potatoes in this garden bed. Now, my neighbour's just started mowing, so sorry if the sound isn't great. I'm just going to cut these Swiss chard off at the roots. I do find that they will grow a little from the roots, and you can use some of those young leaves in salad mixes. Although I'd probably avoid that if you're on a low oxalate diet. These leaves are high in oxalates, as are spinach and the beetroot greens as well. And try not to disturb the soil, but sometimes it's hard to avoid. Okay, well, let's cut that off. Look at that, isn't that pretty? And I'll just leave the rest of it in the ground there, and do the same with this second one that's come out here. Oh, that one's cracked. See, I'll just give it a twist at this point, and you haven't disturbed the soil too much, and you've got that root out. Now we can work on this side. Most of these green lettuces can come out because I've got another one of the same variety just beyond the trellis, so that's okay. Now this plant here is actually flowers from an icicle radish, and I'll be pulling all of those out because I've got plenty of those seeds. Now as we take a closer look at the garden bed here, I've just spotted a beautiful lettuce. Now it's got a really pointed leaf, and I'm not sure what variety that is. I think it came in a salad mix once, a seed pack, and I never did get the name of it. So if anybody knows what this is called, I'd love to hear. I don't think it's a Celtis. One person said once that it was that. And there's also a young Swiss chard growing here, so I might just leave that one in the ground because they're well out of the way of the beans that I want to plant in this garden. And there's another of those lettuces just here, which I think if it wasn't kind of swamped by all these other plants, that would do quite well. So I'm going to leave that in the garden also. A few more potatoes. Well, that's sorted out this side of the trellis. Happy to leave all of these plants. They don't impact on my growing space at all. I'm just going to be growing several different varieties of beans that should climb up and over this trellis, and same on the other side. Now to see about getting the rest of this Swiss chard down. Before I built my last compost, I had piled up lots of seeding radish plants in this spot, as well as a pile of other things. And just look what's happened here now. Lots of little radish plants all sprouting. And all over here as well. Look at them all. Now, I'm not too worried about those. They'll be overtaken by a pumpkin soon enough. And if they don't succumb to that, when autumn comes, I generally let the chickens in here to clean up the pumpkin patch and potato patch, because, as I said, you've always got potatoes everywhere. Now, that's the other side mostly cleared, except for this fennel plant. Now, I think I will have to get out my fork and dig up this root, because what I find is they just keep growing from the root, and that is my preferred method of growing fennel actually, but you do have to control them at times. Just here I've got an area where the root would be a lot smaller, and it's on the edge of my sweet potato bed, so I'm not too worried about that plant remaining there. But that one's getting close to having to be dug up. This is one I dug out of the bed yesterday, just because it was in the way of another plant that I wanted to get in. So yeah, they get quite sizable after a while. Now it is kind of through the middle of the trellis, so we'll see how we go getting this thing out. Okay, we got it. I think the beans will grow a lot better with that in next to them. I have just added some of my homemade compost onto these garden beds, although I went away for 5 minutes and my chickens already dug over one. I have some materials on order to finish my chicken coop so that they can be in a large enclosure and work on compost in there, rather than constantly get out and dig up plants and compost. There's the culprit. You're looking sheepish, or she's just planning another attack. The seeds that I'm going to add to this garden bed, I've got 4 different bean seeds, and they're all home saved seeds, one given to me by a friend. I've got some frost beans and some Ukrainian beans, rattlesnake and a stringless bean, which is what I got from my friend. And I've got 2 cucumbers. I thought maybe around the middle I'll put in a couple of seeds of cucumbers, and then I'll just have beans down the end, and I'll just see how it all goes. The cucumbers might be buried, but I'm going to try. And the same on that side. So I'll have 2 varieties here and 2 varieties on the other side. I will also be starting some cucumber seeds. I do have some plants in already, but I don't mind having later plantings just to extend your season a little bit. So I'll actually pop a few in there just to make sure, and I can always cut off plants if there's too many. Always like the insurance. So that's my Lebanese cucumber, and I'll put my Space Master cucumber on the other trellis. Might dig them in a bit actually. If that chicken's coming around and digging this up, I'll have to put them right in the ground. I'll just shove a few over the other side just to give them a go. Okay. Oh yeah, the potatoes were in here, so this is going to be easy to put these ones in. And in here I've got my frost beans and my Ukrainian beans all mixed, so I'll just do a row of kind of mixed in beans. Alright, so that's pretty good. I hope to get a good blend. Now because there's space sort of through here and it'll be underneath the arch, I'll be putting lettuce seeds through here and maybe some spinach seeds on the other side. And over here I've got some Swiss chard volunteers that I'm going to dig up and move and put down in this section here. It's great to have a thoughtful garden that provides you little seedlings just when you need it. Okay, now I'm going to carefully just separate them and get them in. With that done, we can move on to the chilli and capsicum bed. Now, just here is where I plan to get my habanero and extra capsicum plants in the ground. It did have a radish plant here that I was waiting to go to seed, and I've dumped that down in my carport, and I still haven't got the seeds off it, but it looks like it's dropped plenty here already, which we're going to have to get out today before we get these plants in. Also in this bed, I've got some other chilli plants, different sorts, with some sunflowers and daikon radish. And down the other end, I've got some capsicums and other chilies with some spinach. And just the spinach is really just to fill in the beds until the plants get large enough. So it shouldn't take too long to get this garden ready. I'll just get out most of these little plants, and then I'm just going to add on a layer of compost. Young seedlings you can kind of just fairly easily disturb. I'll get the grasses out, make sure they're not staying in the bed, and any of these kind of larger weeds, they should be right like that. And I'll put the path back over on the path. This little plant here is a zinnia plant, which is being slow to get going really. Hasn't been in too long, but it will definitely benefit from a bit of compost on the soil. And I'll get that down, and that will add to the compost nicely. Now this plant here is just a celery plant that's seeded. So I'm going to just chop that off because I've got plenty of celery going to seed. Okay, yeah, this is all heading for the compost. That garden is clear enough now. All I need to do is get the compost in and then get my plants in. And now some of my compost. Now these little plants are some California Wonder capsicums, which really needed to get out of this little pot ages ago. And these plants my friend gave to me, and she said that they were habanero. They just look a little bit different to normal chili, so I'm going to put them in and we'll see how it all goes. I'll get some water onto those, and I think they're going to be much happier in the ground here than in those pots. Now that we've got those two jobs out the way, I thought we'd have just a quick look around at a few other things, starting with my bean trellis. The beans have actually reached the top of the structure, and we should be getting some flowers fairly soon. Just next to the beans, I've planted out some eggplants, which are just slowly getting going, but I've intermingled some different sorts of basil, which I've also spread in a number of different spots in the garden. Just next to the beans is a zucchini, which is my first productive zucchini, but it wasn't supposed to be a zucchini. I thought I'd planted a cucumber here. I should have taken note of the leaves, but I really didn't pay much attention. It was supposed to be a cucumber like this one, which is just starting to get some flowers on it, and I will have to train it up this trellis a little bit. I have planted another cucumber here. This plant I was gifted by a friend, but as soon as my other zucchini plants become productive, I might have to move this guy on because it's really sort of blocking the paths. Just on this trellis, I've got a pumpkin that's really starting to take off. I have been training it to go up here, and I've still got to kind of get a few of these heading in the right direction. But given my trellis isn't that big, and this plant's already looking huge, I might just sort of trim a few of those branches and just focus on a couple. And once it gets some flowers on it and some fruit set, I might keep trimming so that it doesn't sort of overrun the structure too much. I just want a couple of pumpkins hanging off my trellis if possible. So I'll be doing what I can to achieve that. And I've got my second little trellis over here. This pumpkin is a Jap pumpkin, and the leaves seem a lot smaller, and the plant does too. So probably a bit more appropriate pumpkin to be trying to grow up a trellis. I will have to get out here and just help guide it with a few strings just to make sure that it's going up to the right spot. So I've just spotted in here some lovely pumpkin flowers. I think they're the boys. We're just waiting on a few girls to join the party. And who knows, we might be having some pumpkins starting to form soon. Something I did want to show you today is my pea patch. Now these are peas for shelling. And I have been picking quite a few pods and getting the peas out, and I love to have those in the freezer. But what I'm starting to realise is what I'm thinking is a bush pea, and it's not a climbing pea, it still needs quite a lot of support. Now I've been growing peas like this and trying to dig underneath the plants when it comes time to harvest, but it's really not very good. And some of these peas have actually found support on my trellis. Now I do have snow peas growing up on the other side, but some of these shelling peas, a Melbourne market I think they are, have found their way over there, and they're looking fantastic and they're so easy to harvest. So next year, not doing this again, I'm going to get some structures up so that they can all start climbing, and it'll make the harvest process so much easier. I do find some of the pods on the ground just sort of start to deteriorate, and over here they're just looking fantastic. Also over here is another pumpkin plant, which is a Turk's turban that's made its way by itself up my trellis gate. Don't you just love these little tendrils just hanging on and securing this plant? Hopefully it'll be hold all the wind. And there's a little female flower coming, and hopefully we'll get a few little male ones happening too. I just have to show you these beautiful globe artichoke flowers. The bees just bury themselves in there, and sometimes, you know, you see 6, 7 different bees all on the one flower. They're really fantastic. There's a few other flowers starting to pop out in the garden, like my zinnias. These beautiful red poppies have been out for a while, as have these lovely hollyhocks. We'll definitely have to get out and pick some chamomile for tea very soon. Now there's one flower in my garden that I don't really want hanging around for too long, and that is my comfrey flowers. Now the bees love them and they are beautiful, but they quickly turn to seed, and the idea of having all these comfrey lining my vegetable garden patch is so I can cut it down and use it for mulch. Now if you do that and it's got seeds in it, you're spreading these comfrey everywhere. And as you can see, they turn out to be a massive plant and can be a real problem to move on, because once there's a comfrey root in the ground, you've got a comfrey plant there generally for life. So I really need to cut this down fairly quickly after the flowers appear and use it as mulch, or I often use it in the compost as well, because it really breaks down quickly and heats up a compost quite fast. So I might have to put this job on the list for tomorrow. Well, that's all I've got for you. I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and thanks so much for watching. I wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas, and bye for now.